Everyone knows that peace treaties are meant to prevent war, but what if I told you that one did the exact opposite? Signed in 1919, the Treaty of Versailles meant to bring peace, but instead sowed seeds of discontent. How did this treaty lead to one of the darkest chapters in history? Let's find out. The date is June 28th, 1919. 66 representatives from 32 different countries sit around a horseshoe-shaped table in the center of the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles. Exactly 5 years after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which started World War I, Germany signed a treaty signaling its defeat in the very hall where the German Empire was proclaimed in 1871. No one there thought that this treaty, which aimed to create lasting peace, would fail and spark a second war only 20 years later that would be 4.4 times more deadly. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including a 13% loss of territory, 10% loss of its population, and a 100,000-man limit on the military. Germany also had to pay 269 billion gold marks, or around $37 billion, as reparation payments. This crippled Germany's economy and led to hyperinflation in the 1920s. Later, the sense of resentment and humiliation from the German population would be exploited by right-wing politicians such as Adolf Hitler as a nationalist rallying point. 74 days after the signing, a young man named Adolf Hitler was recruited to a fringe political party named the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party. His talent for public speaking and propaganda allowed him to quickly rise through their ranks, and he effectively leveraged the economic crisis to paint the current government in a bad light. His right-wing extremism was particularly favored by the rich in Munich, where they were based. His desire for power and a better Germany led to the beer hall push 4 years later. The Feldherrnhall, or Field Marshal's Hall, was constructed between 1841 and 1844 as a tribute to the Bavarian army and its leaders. On November 9, 1923, it made global history as the site of Adolf Hitler's failed beer hall push. This attempted coup tried to force the local leaders and army commander into proclaiming a national revolution and was stopped violently by the police. This resulted in the deaths of 4 policemen, 15 pushists, and 1 bystander. Hitler was tried for treason but took advantage of his publicity to reduce his sentence to only 5 years in prison. However, he only served 9 months in relative comfort at the Landsberg Castle. During this time, he dictated the first volume of Mein Kampf, his book detailing his ideology that would later become like the Bible of the Nazi Party. Despite its failure, Nazi leaders reframed the push as a heroic effort to save the nation, later mythologized as a crucial moment in their history. The subsequent trial gave Hitler national attention and a platform to spread his ideas, transforming him from a relatively obscure figure to a nationally recognized leader. After the Nazi Party came to power in 1933, the Feldherrnhall was turned into a memorial for the supposed martyrs who died during the event. Passers-by were even expected to give the Nazi salute upon passing it. This turned the Feldherrnhall and the beer hall push into a pivotal moment in the rise of the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler.
Now we're at the Topography of Terror, which is located on the former grounds of the Gestapo and SS headquarters. This site was instrumental for planning and executing crimes against humanity during the Nazi era.
The Gestapo was established shortly after Adolf Hitler's rise to power in 1933. Initially functioning as a secret state police force, it was tasked with identifying and eliminating political opponents, including socialists, communists, and trade union leaders. The organization utilized brutal tactics such as torture, arbitrary arrests, and surveillance to instill fear within the population. The SS was initially a personal bodyguard for Hitler in 1929, but evolved into a powerful paramilitary organization. It was responsible for maintaining internal security and enforcing Nazi racial policies. After war broke out in 1939, both organizations intensified their operations. The Gestapo started brutal interrogations and public denunciations around the topography of terror and organized mass deportations of perceived enemies. The SS not only managed concentration camps where millions were imprisoned and murdered, but also established death camps specially designed for mass extermination. The Gestapo and SS, housed in the topography of terror, enforced totalitarian control over German society and facilitated one of history's most horrific genocides.
The topography of terror is one of Germany's most visited memorial sites, with over 2 million visitors annually. Through its many exhibitions, it ensures that the history of totalitarianism and its consequences are understood. Aside of the topography of terror, Berlin also hosts several more significant landmarks, another one being the Reichstag, which is constructed from 1884 to 1894. It was initially constructed to house the parliament of the German Empire, later the Weimar Republic.
A few weeks after Hitler became chancellor, a fire broke out in the Reichstag. While it's now suspected that the Nazis themselves set the fire, they blame the communists for this and used it as a pretext to consolidate their power through the Reichstag fire decree. This suspended many civil liberties and facilitated the arrest of political opponents, setting the stage for Nazi dictatorship. After the war, the Reichstag was mostly unused and in disrepair. During the Cold War, it became a symbol of division despite being located in West Berlin. However, finally in 1999, a major restoration project was held, which included the now iconic glass dome symbolizing transparency and democracy. The Reichstag has since become a symbol of democracy and unity in Germany. Despite being the University of Music and Performing Arts Munich today, the building behind me hosts a dark past with expansionist and racist totalitarian regimes. It was constructed between 1933 and 1937 and served as Adolf Hitler's personal headquarters and office in Munich before and during World War II. It most notably hosted the signing of the Munich Agreement, which allowed Germany to annex Sudetenland, which was a German-speaking part of Czechoslovakia at the time.
Representatives from 4 countries negotiated and signed this agreement, including Hitler from Germany, Chamberlain from the UK, Daladier from France, and Mussolini from Italy. Ironically, Czechoslovakia was not invited to participate in the negotiations about its own occupation. The primary goal of the Munich Agreement was to avoid another World War, one which was feared to be even more devastating than World War I. Britain and France followed their policy of appeasement, hoping to satisfy Hitler's territorial demands. The agreement was met with relief, appearing to have averted war. Chamberlain even declared that he had achieved peace for a time upon returning to Britain, leaving Czechoslovakia with a fraction of its territory and weakened defense capabilities.
In the long term, however, the Munich Agreement failed. Hitler annexed the rest of Czechoslovakia by March 1939 and continued to attempt to take over the world. The agreement is even sometimes referred to as the Munich Betrayal in the languages Czech and Slovak, reflecting the sentiment that Czechoslovakia was abandoned by its allies. This building's past has not been forgotten, with a memorial plaque in German, Czech, and Slovak commemorating the signing of the Munich Agreement. The agreement has since become synonymous with the futility of appeasing expansionist totalitarian regimes.
Just a year after the Munich Agreement, on September 1, 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland from the west with over 1.5 million troops in a coordinated attack.
The poorly equipped Polish forces crumbled under the Nazi blitzkrieg. While Poland was still reeling from the Nazi invasion, over 450,000 troops from the Soviet Union invaded from the east. Warsaw, the capital of Poland, surrendered 11 days later on September 28, 1939. To learn more about the Second World War in Europe, make sure to stay tuned for Part 2.